Right, welcome one and all to this new BetMGM Clarence House Saturday card at Ascot preview show. Myself, Dave Orton, with you for the foreseeable, joined by the one and only Jamie Lynch to talk all about this Winter Millions feature race on Saturday. I mean, it's a great card, isn't it? You know, the undercard is great, but really, we're looking at this clash on Saturday.
Yes, it's the mega clash. And we've been here before with the Clarence House. It's got a propensity for delivering big jewels. In fact, one of the participants this year was the same as a few years ago, a race that will live long in our memory.
Yeah, more of that to come. And of course, with this Winter Millions weekend, just a word about this, it is genuinely a great initiative, isn't it?
Yeah. There's not often new things come along in National Hunt racing. They're either repackaged or rebadged. They've rebadged it, you fool, as Alan Partridge would say. But this is genuinely new. It's a new track, a new configuration, a new challenge for jockeys, horses and punters alike. And that's why you and I are here.
Yeah, exactly. And there is a bit of an undercurrent at the minute on racing, Twitter, whatever you call it, social media. But even, you know, on the race course, people are talking about we're a little bit saturated come the second week of March, isn't it? We need to crown these things.
And I think by design, people are talking less and less about Cheltenham and how everything fits into the Cheltenham puzzle and talking more about the season-long puzzle. And that's why weekends like this, and not just races like this, are so important in order to prop up the entire season. And it's hard to look at the 3 days, and especially that one day at Ascot, and especially that one race at Ascot, and not think that is a big pillar for the entire campaign.
Yeah, feature of the weekend, just the four runners. However, before we get into it, we've got an offer for you at BetMGM. New customer offer then from BetMGM. You can get £40 in free bets when you bet £10. All you've got to do is claim. Go to our website at theraces.com/free bets. Of course, then, on Saturday, let's get straight into the meats and bones of it, shall we? 3:32 at Ascot. 4 runners go to post. But, Lynchy, this is the BetMGM Clarence House. And the Grade 1 Pièce de la Resistance of the weekend. It's the clash that everyone, again, we love these in racing, don't we?
Yeah, and it's the contrasts which make the clash. It's the similarities which inevitably bring them together. But how unusual for these two powerhouses to be meeting for the very first time. Is that what makes this so intriguing for you, Dave?
Well, they've both been beaten in the race, of course, last year, but not when it was run at Ascot.
Yeah.
OK? You remember Energumene, he got beaten by Editor Jajit, didn't he, of Gary's Moore. Massive flop when everyone expected him to win. Jonbon, last year, 4-1 on defeat. Of course, back to Ascot we go. And it almost reminds you a little bit, I remember when you've harked back already to when Shishkin took on Energumene, that amazing run-in of changing fortunes. He then, of course, Energumene went on to win the Champion Chase. This isn't his first clash.
No.
You know, it does remind you a little bit. We marketed that at the time in racing, like Ali versus Fraser. You know, we've had Fury versus Usyk now. You've got to say Energumene, while he won't find any pressure about this whatsoever, Mullins will be fancying his chances. He does wreak a bit of fury, doesn't he?
Yeah, maybe he is. So is he over the hill or is he the veteran with that sucker punch still in there? Now, I'm going to tell you the reasons in around about a minute long, why Energumene is going to do for Jonbon in this clash. And it goes back to that very point, Dave, in that this sense that Energumene represents a different era, one removed from the one in which Jonbon has more or less cleaned up in the last few years. And that's because when you look at the horses that Energumene has gone up against and has defeated, they are a level above anything that Jonbon has so far come up against. And that is the thing with Energumene, is that he has been to places and hit heights that Jonbon never has. So with him, he has beaten 19 Grade 1 winners in his time, Energumene. Can you name one Grade 1 winner who Jonbon has beaten?
There's a lot said about Jonbon, isn't there? I mean, he's an amazing horse. If you look at the figures, which obviously we do, he's bang up there, isn't he, with some of the best of them. But for some reason, I don't know whether it's the likes of the horses he's come up against, El Fabiolo, you know, those sort of things, even as a hurdler. Maybe he just, I don't know, he's never really been thought of as being the greatest, has he?
No, and it's almost been sort of adoration by accumulation, in the sense of he's got 8 Grade 1 wins, but none of them really stick in the memory as much as the times he's been defeated. And that's the thing with Jonbon. He was taught a lesson by Constitution Hill in that Supreme. He was beaten by El Fabiolo in the Arkle. And then we come to last year's Clarence House at Cheltenham with that mistake. And that mistake is something that Energumene will try and find the fault line to.
You think he'll go forward?
I think he'll go forward. I think he'll use his merciless mechanical rhythm to try and upset Jonbon, because we have seen on occasions that when Jonbon does unravel, it's when the pressure is at its apex and his jumping sometimes lets him down. And those sequence of fences, 4 and 5, and then 6, 7 and 8 at Ascot, which are the perfect reason and perfect rationale for Energumene turning the screw, as he did to Shishkin before Shishkin came back.
Yeah, so, Shishkin looked beat, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah,
you can count on one hand the horses who'd have beaten Energumene from history. And I don't think that Jonbon is a Shishkin. Now, the question is the 2025 version of Energumene the same as that? And that's where we come to Cork, isn't it? Because the style and substance of Cork, it's there, as is the SP, went off 5-4.
I knew this is coming.
On ratings, Dave, he's about £10 shy of where he was at his pomp. So that £10, that 10% will be the defining battlefield for this. If Energumene still got it, I don't think that Jonbon can beat him. But if Energumene is an 11-year-old with wear and tear and father time meets mother nature, then Jonbon will certainly be able, and has got the talent and the skills to do him.
Well, you referenced the Hilliway at Cork. Of course, he was about to be challenged by Banbridge. A lot of people were thinking, well, is he still up to speed? Of course, that was maybe over the tip. Totally different trip to the King George. But of course, Banbridge went and won the King George. So you could give that a ratings boost, couldn't you? Now, you mention age. All right, this is Team Jonbon here. Not that I have to be too much. We're talking about 6-4 on at BetMGM as we're recording, 2-1 Energumene. You've got Edwardstone at 8s. We'll come to him, and of course Bootill at 12s, and you might put another 0 on that. A lot of punters will, I think, on form so far. So why the 6-4 on? It's maybe slightly more inflated than a lot of people think. But then you'd start to look at the nuts and bolts of the race. You could almost call this a veterans Clarence House Chase, couldn't you? You've got, of course, Bootill. He's getting on now. Of course, here we are in January, so he's now become a 10-year-old. You've got Edwardstone. He's now 11, and Energumene are the very same age. You could argue quite easily that this will be Jonbon's peak season, I think. He's 1-from-1 at Ascot. The setup of the race, which is something we've got to talk about, because I'm not convinced that something won't try and take on Energumene. And just when you think Energumene is going to go from the front, do you remember when he won the championship? They held him up. It was the biggest curveball of recent years, wasn't it? He's very versatile on that front. What do you think Edwardstone will do?
Well, Edwardstone was at his best last year. His revival came with that trailblazing tactics which served him so well. And you would think that the only way to try and recapture those glories is to do the same again. And Ascot is a good track for that type of tactic. So the question will almost be decided before the race, because the jockeys will be looking at each other and maybe he's in conversation or maybe he's with poker faces to say, well, who's going to go on here? But
they say they don't do that down at the start, by the way, don't they? But we know they do. And in the weighing room, they got half an hour to talk about it.
So does that help Jonbon in the sense of it doesn't really matter?
It does. It doesn't matter. And if you can remember, sometimes at Cheltenham, I remember when he won the Schlur Chase there, after a fence or two, they let him stride on. That's very Nico de Boinville, isn't it, his pilot? His jockey will absolutely go to plan B and say, let's just crack on with it if there's no pace. Right, let's sum this up. We go on and on about it. What are you thinking out there, guys? But I think 6-4 on will get shorter, and I think he wins. Jonbon.
I think that at the prices, I'm drawn to Energumene. And the feeling that Cork suggested that the appetite and the ability was all there. And if all of the appetite and ability is there, there won't be anything that Jonbon can do against him.
It's going to be amazing, isn't it? Paul Townend at Christmas twice saw the back end of Nico de Boinville on very, very good horses. And, Constitution Hill and Zagino, he's going to be proper reared up Townend for this, isn't he?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It's not just about the equine power, it's about the jockeyship involved. The smaller the field, the more magnified tactics, and every move will be amplified. So it's going to be fascinating from the equine point of view, but also from the human point of view. Yeah,
4 runners then. You've heard it. Lynchy thinks if he's like he was, Jonbon can't get near him. I think this will be Jonbon's day in the sun, and he's going to get shorter, of course, for the champion chase. We'll talk about anti-post as we go on, because we've got other races on a really sumptuous MGM card. Of course, at the 140, we've got the Mares' Hurdle coming up. I was lucky enough to speak to Patrick Mullins when we were on our Sky channel, and he came on, and you know what it's like whenever you do a pre-recorded segment, which we did with Patrick, you tee them up a little bit. He said, Patrick, we might talk about this. What do you reckon? Is Energumene definitely coming over? We got a line about him. Pretty all sort of standard stuff here. The first horse that I went to over any other that I could have asked him about, and I just went there, was Kargese, whatever we call her. Last year's very good juvenile filly. She's back in the 140. She's 3-1 already. There's been a plurge, anti-post wise, but behind Lossymouth in the Mares. Is she going? Brighter days ahead. It looks like she's not going. She's going to be fav. They talk very glowing terms of her. She's got the Majborough form. She's got the Sagino form. If she settles, she could still be the real deal.
Yeah. So that's exactly right. Sergino and Majbra are two really exceptional horses we're finding out very early on. And what else we're finding out is the general bunch of juveniles from last year, they are more than holding their own. Burdett Road won a Greatwood and finished fairly close behind Constitution Hill. So we can look at that juveniles, and when sometimes we're thinking, well, it's a different ball game in open company, actually, they are going against that and showing their worth. And that speaks very well for Kargese, doesn't it, as she makes her seasonal debut. But the very fact it's her reappearance is that on her best form, the Sergino Majbra form, she can't get beat here. She's too good for the rest. But she can beat herself, Dave. And what's in my mind is just that simple fact of there were 2, even 3 occasions last year when her innate, inbuilt keenness almost tipped over into doing too much. And this is going to be an open invitation for her after the absence, having travelled over, the other jockeys knowing her fault lines and trying to play to that. So I am concerned about taking short odds about her at Ascot. First time out with her free-going nature in a race with that invitation to do too much.
All right, I've got my MGM hat on. I'm offering you a price. What are you going to want before I can tempt you in?
Well, the depth of the field is the worry, isn't it?
Come on. We always do this on the channel together. You can get this. If I said 7-4 on, would you be having a bit of that?
No.
You want it to be bigger?
Yeah, I was going to go.
It's never going to happen.
4 to 5. I was going to go 4 to 5.
4 to 5.
That's too much, yeah.
Oh, it's way too much, man. I'm stepping out of the ring if you're coming in offering 4 to 5.
No.
You know what I mean? I'm not having it.
No, but I do think that there is that uncertainty about her, less on her form and more on her fundamental nature, which is the issue with her.
But she's one of the stars on show. That's 140. That's a grade 2 BetMGM Mares Hurdle. 3 to 1. Loads of you will be piling down to see her as well at Ascot as well. Talking to juveniles, a lot of people will be piling into Ascot on Saturday to see, the clash between Jonbon and Energumene. A lot of people might be going to see their anti-post wager on Kargese and how that follows out. But the opener, a lot of people will be going to see Lulamba, of course, who before he set foot on a British racecourse, for those Sergino colours, if you like, the Donnellys and Henderson, has been a massive anti-post plunge for the Triumph Hurdle on the back of a win in France, Lynchy. Now, 2's on, with BetMGM, you might expect that to be the sort of SP, all right? He is short.
Yes.
But there is a player in this race. Yeah. And if I'd have said to you, come Royal Ascot time last year, that Mondo Man, who you were annoying everyone with the sectionals, as he rode home behind Calandigan, I'll see you in January at Berkshire at the Royal Course. He's gelded. He's cost 520 grand. He's going to be in the Botox Has colours for Gary Moore, and we're going to be on the road to the Triumph. You would not have believed me.
It's incredible, isn't it? And we have 2 or 3 Triumph trials at Cheltenham through the season, but this feels like the most meaningful Triumph trial we've had in Britain so far. And this all started with, as you said, the anti-post plunge on Lulamba and the noise around him. And that has obviously impacted and infected his price for Ascot on Saturday. But let's talk about that Ortoy debut and what he did that was so impressive and what convinced New Connections to get him on their top team. Well, as you can see, he jumps superbly. For a horse who's making his very first start, he was on point at every single hurdle, and that gave the jockey options. And the jockey never had to go for the whip at any stage in order for Lulamba to take off at the finish. And how fast was he going at the finish? Well, we've got the France Gallop data, which tells you exactly how fast he was going on the tracking report, and he was the fastest of any horse that day. 35 miles an hour he was topping at the end, and you can see that with the horse full of running at the finish. So what he did for 9/10 of the race, Dave, is fairly orthodox or ordinary or unexceptional, but it was actually on the running, how he started to open up, that I think probably opened New Connections' eyes to saying, let's try and get him on the team if we can.
Looked a big raw sort, didn't he? And it was a good race, as we know. So what you're saying, Lynch, is that the facts actually back up the hype about this horse, because a couple of weeks ago, a lot of punters were thinking we need to start getting going. The weather wasn't doing much. He, of course, was supposed to run at Kempton on the Lanzarote card.
Yeah.
So this could be, if you like, an afterthought of some sort.
Yeah.
And then he was around about 10s. He's now 4 to 1 best for the Triumph with BetMGM. It does back it up.
It doesn't back it up. And that's just one little element to come out of it. I mentioned that miles per hour that he was clocking at the finish, but having searched and researched, that is the one only data point that you can say, well, that's impressive.
You're suggesting he's a tree.
I'm not at all, but I'm saying that there were 4 races over that trip on that day, and he was only the second fastest of them, only marginally faster than the more ordinary juveniles or handicappers on that card. So you're relying on the eye test, and yes, on the eye test, he did pass it and pass it well. But he and they could never have ever expected to come up against a horse of Mondo Man's ability, starting out for Britain in this sort of environment. Because how rare, Dave, to see a horse rated 111 making his debut over hurdles. 111. It's like a bygone era, isn't it? The Alderbrook age of horses that good coming to jumps. They don't find themselves in jumping these days, apart from this horse. So he's really unusual to be that good coming here.
Yeah, 520 grand then. Gary has paid for this with the owners. Well-known colours. Nassalem, of course. Botox Hass, as I mentioned. Baron Elko, who won a Betvicar Gold Cup, etc. He came onto most people's radar when William Buick rode him a lot, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he always came late on the scene.
Yes.
Right? And I remember you saying to me, this could just be a player for the Arc if he goes. It was Grand Prix de Paris. He didn't fire in, did he?
That's
been
right.
gelded since. If you're Nicky Henderson, you're thinking, what is this pesky fly doing in here?
So we're going to look at the King Edward VII Stakes won by the mighty Calandagan, but we've got an eye on Mondo Man. And what he did here was replicated before that. And that's the reason why I was always drawn to this horse, is that the sectionals at the end, they were always really striking. He was the fastest of any horse in the French Derby over the last 3 furlongs. And here at Royal Ascot, he was the fastest outside of Calandagan in the final furlong. So that is a lot of ability and a lot of speed to be bringing to the hurdling game. So one with his speed, style and staying power, that's an unusual mix to be starting out in juvenile hurdles. And that's the reason why this is going to be a real test for Lulamba, because he and they would never ever have expected to face a horse of Mondo Man's quality.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be amazing, isn't it? And stand by and your buzz will sort of triumph after this, because are we having a bet here? Because I told you that he was excited about this, and when you talk like that, that is Lynchy being excited.
Yeah, well,
Mondo Man's the bet, right? He's 11-4 at the moment with BetMGM.
I mean, I'm a numbers man, and the numbers that Mondo Man clocked on ratings, on sectional times, on overall times, and at the prices that he is now making his hurdling debut. How few hurdle races would he be that sort of price for that are away from graded company?
Do you know who won this race a couple of years ago? Did you look back at the roll call?
No, I didn't.
It's Goshen.
Goshen won,
his
did
final
he? Yeah.
prep, I think, wasn't it?
Really, yeah, that's right. Really interesting.
Fateful unseat, call it what you want.
And speaking of Lulamba, the one horse who jumps off the page for the newcomers event that he won is Bristol de Mai. So even though it was only a newcomers race at Auteuil, that is traditionally a really hot race where a lot of the stables, higher fancied, better powered horses are run.
Yeah, links all over the place, because that was for the double green of Isaac Swade and Simon Munir, of course, Bristol de Mai, who won this race with Top Notch.
Yeah,
who went on to place, didn't he? Of course, at Cheltenham. So look, that's an absolute belter at 12:30. I'll be getting involved in Mondo Man. Watch the market for that. Talking about bets on the card, have you had a look at some other races?
I have, Dave, and there's a horse who's been in my tracker for a while, is that Ansam, for his likely return to chasing. He gets it at Ascot at a track where he's won before, and I just like the make and shape of this race. He's back off his last winning mark. The stable's flying, isn't it, Evan Williams?
Yeah.
In the last 6 weeks, it's a different stable, which helps. He's had 2 prep runs over hurdles, and it's just a sort of race and track where he shines. So I just think the stars are potentially aligning with Ansam. I'm interested to see what price he is, because obviously it's a little bit under the radar and a little bit of a dot joiner. So that's one handicap I've got my eye on. What about you, Dave?
The BetMGM Holloway handicap. That looks interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of these were supposed to run, of course, in the Lanzarote, weren't they? Which was, of course, abandoned last weekend. And you've got Bo Zenith at the top of the market, as it speaks, for Hendo and Ollie Harris, who was a seismic gamble on his return from a spell in the wilderness. Very good juvenile, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Spoke to a lot of the boys here at Sky in the office. They absolutely love this guy. And I remember being in that office. They all backed him. We had Cheltenham on a screen as I was getting ready to go and do a show in the gallery that day. And it's fair to say, as eye catchers go, he fell into that category.
Yeah.
Did you watch it back?
Yeah.
I mean, how on earth does he place in
it?
that race? Now, he's getting over some longer distance, but the one thing that I took away from that as I was walking out and laughing at the boys bemoaning their luck, I think most of them backed him each way, I thought the cat's out of the bag here.
Yeah.
The cat is out the bag here. And he's got a couple of other runners in the race, and I think this race sets up to take on the favourite. I see that BetMGM have already pushed him out to 100 to 30. I think that will get bigger, Bo Zenith. I think the day was at Cheltenham. He had another one in the race from it was Will Mount as well, wasn't it? Of course. That was almost like, I know poor Will Mount fell that day, but it was almost like a double bluff. He drifted out. Ollie Harris in his battalion. All the Wolves came in the ring and tried to have a go at him. I like Aston Martini here.
Yeah.
Who's got Freddie Gordon on. Flop last time out. I fancied her in the Lanzarote. She went under the radar. That run at Bangor on her comeback when we saw her on the channel, it was a race that the late Henry Ponsonby's colours had some association with, I'm led to believe.
Right.
So she was probably off for her life that day.
Yeah.
And she just tired out of it on the running. I think she's coming under this at the radar, and I have noticed a bit of blue. See, Goshen's in this race as well.
Yeah.
He's making his comeback. Good luck with that. Surely it can't be the Stayers Hurdle, do you? But if you want a juicy one this weekend, I think Aston Martini with Freddie Gordon on. About 16, she'll go off. She could be one.
I like it, Dave, and I like the theme of the old and the new as well. Goshen comes into the old category. Could Mondo Man be the new Goshen? And in the big clash, it is effectively the old and the new. Jonbon is the new kid on the 2-mile block, even at his age and stage and all of his accomplishments. But I've got a feeling that the old man's got one last hurrah in him.
All right, that's it. That's your preview show done. Thanks for joining us here on this BetMGM Clarence House preview. Myself and Lynchy. Get involved, like and subscribe. You know the deal. Enjoy Saturday.